The NFL draft is just around the corner. Believe it or not, folks, in 2025, we are here, but 4 months away, a little less than 4 months away from the NFL draft in Green Bay this year. Curious how that's going to work out. And I know Tepper probably would like to get the NFL draft here in Charlotte, but we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about what the Carolina Panthers should do with pick number 8. Carolina Panthers have a lot of needs. Most of their needs on the defensive side of the ball. We can talk about offense, and of course, we'd love a wide receiver. When you talk about positions that are probably off the table or absolutely off the table, I think we'd have to say quarterback. Likely not going to get that at number 8. There's some decent tight ends in this group, but I don't think you take a tight end at number 8, so you cross that one off your list. I feel like the interior guard positions are secure. Left tackle with Ike Ekwonu, the way they talked about him, that's secure. Maybe you look right tackle if there's a tackle that's available that really would fit you. That's maybe a possibility. We already said no to quarterback. I think running back is off the table. I know some people are high on Ashton Jeanty, Omari and Hampton. I don't see the Panthers reaching for a run. Like, there's not a Christian McCaffrey-esque back. And Ashton Jeanty is great. But I don't see the Panthers doing that, considering they have Chuba Hubbard. They spent the pick in the second round last year with Jonathan Brooks. Like, I feel like if they're going to get a running back, it would be much later. So then that really points us to a wide receiver on the offensive side of the ball, a center, but I think you could push a center later. So I'd really say wide receiver. So I'd put that up there as a possibility on offense. Now, defense, I think the door is wide open. I think you cannot go wrong with any pick on the defensive side of the ball. I think the top choice has to be on the defensive front. An edge outside the linebacker it has to be the top priority. A playmaker that can come in. Now you have DJ Wonnum, you have Clowney, but I think a younger guy that can rotate with Clowney is probably the best situation for the Carolina Panthers. I'd put that at number 1. You probably could also put a defensive end or a nose tackle in this mix if the right one was available. I think you can't go wrong on the defensive front. Like I said, this team was bad. Now, linebacker, I don't think there's a good enough linebacker per se that you would take right here at pick number 8. So I'd probably slot them back, although I still think we need to look at a linebacker, even though we have Trevin Wallace. I think the need maybe drops down a little bit. You have to remember the Carolina Panthers almost got another linebacker from Denver, but he chose to go back last season. So that would leave us with a safety or a cornerback. So I think all those options are on the table. I think a safety, because there's so many free agents on the roster, would be a little bit higher than a corner. And I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on that. But all that said, let's get into it. Let's talk about, as we get our pre-draft, mock draft season up and running, let's start to analyze these picks. And we're going to look and focus today on pick number 8. Who should the Carolina Panthers take at pick number 8? And folks, we're looking at a bucket of players, and to be honest, there's a few of these guys that I just don't think are going to make it that far. And let's go with the first 2 on the list. Number 1 being Travis Hunter. Yes, I do think he's a generational talent. Where is he going to play? Wide receiver, cornerback? I don't know. Probably more on the defensive side of the ball with a package on offense that he could fill in for. That's my thought. I do think he should still be able to play both sides, probably getting involved in the return game as he heads into the NFL. But I don't see him dropping outside of the top 5, especially with the Panthers picking at number 8. I know there's some quarterback needy teams. I know there's some good defensive players on this board. I don't think Travis Hunter makes it out of the top 5. The other one, unfortunately for Panthers fans, and you're going to see all kinds of mock drafts, in my mind right now, the best player in the draft really is Abdul Carter. And I know game time decision, I believe, on if he's going to be able to play now in the college football playoffs. I know he was injured, but he feels like the best player in the draft. I think some quarterbacks will be taken before him because that's what we do. Teams make a decision to value a quarterback over a different player. So Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, then Abdul Carter. But I don't see Abdul Carter being available. If he was, you're running to the podium. So I kind of put those two guys off my list. And then I move into a more realistic expectation of who possibly could be there. So on my list, I mean, I have 5 guys. I just gave you Hunter and Abdul Carter. That's 7. Throw in the 2 quarterbacks. That's 9 total players. So by default, one of these guys, or technically 2 of these guys, are going to be available at pick number 8. I think the bucket of 5 that I'm looking at right now are probably going to be the guys that we're going to be looking at. So number 1, Mason Graham. He's another one that I don't know if he will slide outside of the top 5 or 6 or 7, but he is also, like, if Abdul Carter is off the board, Mason Graham, defensive tackle. I know he's not an edge. The Panthers need guys, man. They need guys along that defensive front. A'Shaun Robinson has looked good. Derek Brown will be back, and like, give this defensive front everything they can have. We need anything and everything to be able to stop the run next year. So throw him in the mix. Let's go ahead and talk about edge. I think realistically, there's 2 edge players that could be available. We look at Mykel Williams out of Georgia, as well as Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M. Now, we would value Mykel Williams first, and then Nick Scourton would probably fall after that. But those are my 2. Now, we're not even getting into second round. We're focused on the first round today. Kyle Kennard out of the University of South Carolina. If we decide to go defensive tackle, safety, wide receiver, whoever, and do not take an edge in this with this pick number 8, I'd love to get Kyle Kennard in the second round out of the University of South Carolina. Fantastic football player. So we have 2 edges, a defensive tackle, a safety, Malachi Starks, another football player out of Georgia. You know, the funny thing to me, when people talk about the SEC football, and I'm a fan, like y'all know, partially of South Carolina, people hate on the SEC, and that's fine. Like, I don't care. But I also, it's funny to go on draft day and look at the number of players in the NFL now and the number of player on active rosters that are drafted out of the SEC, and it's head and shoulders above everyone else. That's where the talent lies. But a guy like Malachi Starks, impact safety. And like, I know safety's not the sexiest position. Panthers did a terrible job with Jeremy Chin, but we need coverage over the top with guys that can play, and a young guy. You look at a guy like Kyle Hamilton for the Baltimore Ravens and what he's been able to do. This is why I like the possibility, if for some reason these other guys just, they're not there, that your edge isn't there, that you focus and go out and get your safety. The last one is the only, I guess, outside of Travis Hunter, who's not going to be available, the only wide receiver, offensive player that I would consider at pick number 8 for the Carolina Panthers, Tet McMillan, on my list. Yes, wide receiver out of Arizona. As we've discussed, I've made multiple videos about the Panthers needing a number 1 wide receiver. In the event they don't get a T. Higgins, they can't get a Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, whoever, I think the Panthers have to consider drafting a wide receiver. I'm not saying it's the best decision to make, but you go back a few years ago when the Cincinnati Bengals chose Jamar Chase. Now, I know that was Burrow's guy, but they chose Jamar Chase over drafting a left tackle. All those things panned out. If you do really well through free agency on the defensive side of the ball, I think you give yourself the chance to do this and pick a wide receiver. But to me, it feels like defense all the way will likely be the pick for the Carolina Panthers at number 8. I'd love to know who you think the Carolina Panthers should pick. We will be back to discuss more in depth the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the picks that are to come. And I'll give you my take and thoughts on who the Panthers should take. As always, this is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a